Do you have a brand new Instant Pot and don't know what to do with it? Watch this video to see all of the tips and tricks for using your Instant Pot, what all those buttons mean, what the valves mean, and how to safely use your Instant Pot every day. My name is Aileen Clark. I'm a food blogger, cookbook author, Instant Pot lover, mom of 3, and I live in Northern California. I love creating family-friendly recipes that are easy to make and reduce stress in the kitchen.
So let's get started. This is your Instant Pot. What I have here is an Instant Pot Duo 6-quart. And I'm just going to go ahead and unplug it for now. So the first thing I want to show you is the lid. It goes on a little funny, and if you don't do it right, it won't go on right. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But the first thing I want to talk about is this sealing ring. This comes in and out, this little metal line right here. It has to fit snugly or your Instant Pot will not work correctly. You want to make sure you take this off every time you use it and wash it with soap and water and let it air dry. Inside here is a valve that comes off and you can wash. It protects food from getting clogged in your Instant Pot pressure release, so it's important to keep it on while you're cooking, especially when using things, starchy things and pasta, things like that. And then this right here is actually a little floater. So you can see that it comes up and down. When you're cooking with an Instant Pot, your pot has to come to pressure before it actually starts cooking, and that takes about 10 minutes depending on how much liquid is in your Instant Pot. You'll know that it's come to pressure for a couple of reasons. One, it'll beep at you and start counting down. The other is this little metal piece in here is going to pop up. And you'll see it right here. It's still flat with the top of the lid, depending on the Instant Pot that you have. I also have an 8-quart and it pops up a little bit higher and it's red. But most of them, the Duo 6-quart is silver, and it's just flush with the lid when it's under pressure. Do not try and remove the lid when it's like that. That's a safety issue. You always want to make sure it's all the way down before you open the lid. The other thing I want to talk about is the sealing valve, which is right here. It does come off, but you need it on while you're cooking. And there's 2 directions. So when it's on, when you set it, this is venting and this is sealing. So when you're reading a recipe and it says set it to sealing, you just push this back. That seals it and allows the pot to come to pressure. If you don't do this, your pot will not come to pressure and it won't cook correctly. So it's really important when you're trying a recipe or cooking with your Instant Pot to make sure that it's at sealing when you're using it for pressure cooking. If you're using it for like slow cooking, then it can stay at venting. Now, when your pot is done cooking, when it's finished counting down and it beeps at you, again, to tell you it's done cooking, there's 2 different ways that you can finish the cooking process with your Instant Pot, and it does depend on the recipe. Some recipes will say to allow it to natural pressure release, and that's where you just leave it. You don't mess with this valve, and you wait till that little silver thing right here, this thing, comes down into there. Once it's down, you can switch this to venting and take your lid off. This has some holes in it. Steam shoots out of here. So this is, I think, people's main fear when they start with the Instant Pot. You always want to just carefully make sure your hand's out of the way. You do not want to grab it from the top because you'll burn yourself. You'll see after cooking with your Instant Pot for a few days that it's easy enough to just switch it over here. The steam is not going to come out. There's no hole at the end of this. The steam is not going to come out through the side. It comes out through the top, and you push it over. And then the steam does shoot straight up. So just, make sure your hand's not up here either, because it is really hot steam. Once the steam finishes releasing, which can take a few minutes, again, this floating valve will come down, and you're safe to remove your lid. Now let's talk about our lid. I'm going to plug this baby back in. So when you're putting your lid on and taking it off, it does make a noise, and that'll indicate that you're doing it correctly. If you're trying to use your Instant Pot and you can't get that lid on, I know people struggle with that, make sure that you hear that noise. You hear it. Let's do it again. I'll show you when it closes. And so the other thing is you always want to make sure your sealing ring is in. I'm going to show you how to put it back in now. You just slide the edges around the metal and just push it all the way in, all the way around. And you do want to make sure it's all the way in there secure. Otherwise, the Instant Pot will look like it's working, but it's not gonna cook correctly. So if you try and cook something, it may say it's pressurized and all of that, but really if this isn't pushed in all the way, it's not gonna cook effectively and your food may come out partially cooked. If that does happen, just do it again. If it's partially cooked, I would just cut the cook time down in half and restart it, but make sure that your sealing ring is in there. Another thing I want to show you is back here on the back of the Instant Pot. There's this little cup, and sometimes water will come out of here and fill up, especially if you're doing something really liquidy. So you want to check it from time to time, like when you're cleaning your pot, and just make sure if there's any liquid in there, you dump it out. If it's dirty, you clean it. It's pretty easy. It slides right on. So it's actually very easy to get on and off. Okay, now let's talk about the buttons and what they mean. So the majority of the buttons on here, although it seems complicated, are all just set times. They don't cook any differently. They're just ways, if you're just throwing together your own recipe, if you like to do that, like just throw a bunch of stuff in a pot and make soup, just press the soup button. It's really that simple. There are multiple timings for a lot of these. Soup, 20, 30, or 4 hours. I believe the 4 hours is for broth, but to be honest, you don't need 4 hours for broth in the Instant Pot. You only need an hour. So all of these, meat, bean and chili, poultry, rice, multigrain, porridge, and steam, these are all just set times for cooking in your Instant Pot. You can use them if you want to, or you can skip them. A lot of recipes you're gonna find from food bloggers tell you to use the manual or pressure cook button. That's the one that I primarily use because it's easier to just set your own time. The older versions of Instant Pot actually said manual, not pressure cook, but it's the same button. So as long as you have one of those buttons, either manual or pressure cook, you're good to go. And same for reading recipes. If you find a recipe and they say to press the manual button, but you only have a pressure cook button, it's the same thing and you're in the clear. So for the pressure cook button, you just press it and then you use the plus and minus to change the time. And it usually stays where you were cooking with it last time. So if you used 30 minutes last time, that's what it'll show. You can also use this delay start button, and that you set a timer for it to wait and it times down and then it starts cooking. So if you need to play around with it starting later in the day, you can do that. But I don't recommend using it as you would a slow cooker where you set something in the morning and you let it cook all day. The Instant Pots unfortunately just don't work that way. Your food would be sitting in here, and if it's got meat in it, it could be growing harmful black bacteria. So unless it's gonna only be 10 or 20 minutes, I wouldn't use the delay start button. The yogurt button is specifically for making yogurt, and you just press it and follow the directions on the recipe that you're using. We'll talk about yogurt on another day. Another really important button is the saute button, and this one is really cool. So when you press the saute button, the inside of your pot actually heats up as it would a pot on the stove, and you can use it to brown meats, to heat up leftovers. You can use it to melt chocolate. You can use it for so many things. And you'll see that many recipes have you saute your meats and vegetables before cooking them under pressure to add that extra layer of flavor. It's really amazing because it allows you to just stir in one pot. You don't have to use your stove. If you, for some reason, don't have access to a stove, your Instant Pot can be a good replacement for that. But we use it all the time. It's really amazing, and it does really make recipes better by sauteing them first. And you can just use that and not pressure cook at all and just use it as you would a pan on the stove. The other one is the keep warm button. Now, when your Instant Pot finishes cooking and depressurizes, it automatically switches to keep warm until you turn it off. But there are times when you may want to use the keep warm button for like parties. Like let's say you made a really big batch of chili and then you refrigerated it and you wanted to serve it the next day. It's going to taste so much better, but you need it to stay warm and to be warmed up. Well, what you could do is push the saute button, heat up your chili, and then once it's warmed throughout, you just switch it to keep warm. And then it's here in the Instant Pot, warm and ready to be served directly from the pot for all of your guests, and it'll stay warm for hours. So that's a really good function to have if you're serving guests. It also works really well for mashed potatoes.